The phone call that destroyed my family started with my son forgetting to hang up. I'm Edward Callahan, and what I heard next changed everything. It was Tuesday afternoon, 2:15 p.m., when Chris's voice came through my iPhone speaker. He thought he'd ended our call about quarterly reports, but there he was, talking to someone else. Someone familiar. "Dad's too blind to see we control everything now," my son said. "The old man can barely operate his laptop without those reading glasses." Then I heard her laugh. Gina, my ex-wife. "Perfect," she said. "Once we get him declared incompetent, we split Beacon Tech 50-50. $3.2 million is worth a little patience." My hands stayed steady. My breathing stayed calm. Because while my family was planning to steal my life's work, they had no idea what I'd been building in secret. If you're watching this, please subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. Here's how a father's love became a lesson in respect. For 6 months, I'd been collecting evidence of how my own family saw me. The first incident happened during our September board meeting. I was presenting Q3 numbers when my laptop froze, just for 30 seconds. But Chris jumped up like the building was on fire. "Dad, maybe I should handle the tech presentations," he said, grabbing my MacBook Pro. "You know how these new systems can be challenging?" The room went quiet. Rebecca Stone, our CFO, shot him a look that could cut glass. But the damage was done. I watched 5 investors exchange glances, the kind of glances that said, "Maybe the old man's losing it." 3 weeks later, Gina showed up at the office. Officially, she came to collect her final divorce papers. But she stayed for coffee, then lunch, then started visiting twice a week. "Edward looks tired," she told Rebecca, loud enough for me to hear. "All this stress from running a tech company at his age, it's not healthy." She'd bring articles, printed articles, because she knew I preferred reading on paper. 10 signs of cognitive decline in business leaders. When founders should step down. Always left on my desk like helpful suggestions. The breaking point came last Monday. I was in my office trying to update our customer database. The new interface had changed. I spent 20 minutes figuring out where they'd moved the export function. Chris walked in just as I was putting on my reading glasses. "Still struggling with basic software, Dad?" I looked up. My son stood in my doorway like he owned it. His $500 Tom Ford glasses caught the afternoon light. His Tesla Model S key dangled from his finger. "I'm managing fine," I said. "Right." He stepped closer. "Look, I've been thinking. Maybe it's time you considered stepping back. Take a consultant role. Enjoy retirement." "I'm 59, Chris." "Exactly. You've earned a break. Let someone younger handle the day-to-day tech decisions. Someone younger, like him." "The company's in good hands," I said. "Is it, though?" He sat down, uninvited. "Yesterday you asked me who Jake Morrison was. He's been our lead developer for 8 months. I had forgotten Jake's name for about 10 seconds until it came back to me, but those 10 seconds were enough. "Dad, I love you. We all do. But love means being honest. You're not keeping up." After he left, I sat in my leather desk chair, the one my father had given me when I started Beacon Tech 15 years ago, and realized something important. They weren't wrong about my memory lapses. I had been forgetting names, struggling with new software, needing reading glasses for the first time in my life. But they were completely wrong about why. For 18 months, I'd been working 16-hour days, not on Beacon Tech's regular business, on something else, something that required every spare brain cell I had. While Chris was planning his Tesla payments, and Gina was planning her comeback, I was filing patents. 2 of them. Revolutionary AI algorithms that would transform how small businesses manage data. The work was exhausting. I'd spend my days pretending to struggle with basic software, then spend my nights developing software that would make everything else obsolete. My technological incompetence was actually technological overload. But here's what really bothered me. It wasn't the memory lapses or the tired eyes. It was the casual cruelty in how they discussed my decline. Like I wasn't human. Like 15 years of building Beacon Tech from nothing meant nothing. Like the late nights, the missed dinners, the sacrifices that built the company they now wanted to steal. All of it was just an old man refusing to accept reality. 3 days after Chris's retirement suggestion, I got a text from Gina. Saw the news about tech founders with dementia. So sad. Coffee tomorrow? Attached was a Forbes article. When Silicon Valley legends lose their edge. That's when I knew they weren't just planning to ease me out. They were building a narrative. A story where loving family members heroically saved a declining company from its incompetent founder. The beautiful part? They were documenting everything themselves. Chris's emails to board members about Dad's concerning behavior, Gina's worried conversations with our investors. Rebecca told me about the Whisper campaign, how they'd approach people with concerns about my leadership. All of it would be evidence later, when the time came. Because while they were spreading rumors about my declining mind, I was preparing something that would prove exactly how sharp that mind still was. The patent applications were submitted 14 months ago. The provisional filing was 18 months ago, all with timestamps and documentation that would show exactly when my incompetent brain developed algorithms worth millions. But I needed more than patents. I needed them to fully commit to their betrayal, to cross lines they couldn't uncross. So I kept playing the part. The tired father who didn't understand modern technology, the declining founder who needed gentle guidance. And they kept taking the bait. If I stayed silent, I'd lose everything that mattered. Beacon Tech wasn't just a company. It was 15 years of my life. Every line of code in our original software came from my keyboard. Every client relationship started with my handshake. The financial loss alone would destroy me. Beacon Tech was valued at $3.2 million in our last assessment. That represented my entire life savings, my retirement, my legacy. If Chris and Gina succeeded in having me declared incompetent, they'd split everything 50-50. I'd get a small monthly allowance, like an allowance for my own son. But the money wasn't even the worst part. 23 employees depended on Beacon Tech for their livelihoods. Rebecca Stone had been with me since year 2. Jake Morrison, yes, the developer whose name I'd momentarily forgotten, had 3 kids and a mortgage. Maria Santos ran our customer service and was 2 years from retirement. Under Chris's leadership, everything would change. He'd already mentioned streamlining operations and eliminating redundancies. Corporate speak for firing people who'd helped build this company. These weren't just employees, they were family. Real family. The kind that showed up when things got hard, not the kind that tried to steal from you when they thought you were weak. My reputation was on the line too. Austin's tech community is small. Word travels fast. If the narrative stuck, that Edward Callahan lost his edge and had to be removed by his own family, I'd never work in this industry again. 15 years of respect, gone. Replaced by whispers about the founder who couldn't adapt to modern technology. The worst part was knowing how they'd tell the story. Chris would be the hero, the loving son who saved his father's company from embarrassing decline. Gina would be the concerned ex-wife who set aside personal differences to help. I'd be the cautionary tale, the founder who held on too long. But there was something else at stake, something bigger than money or reputation. My father built furniture, real furniture, with his hands. When arthritis forced him to retire, he gave me his tools and his desk chair. Build something that lasts, he said, something worthy of your name. Beacon Tech was that something. But more than that, it was proof that the Callahan name meant integrity, that we kept our word, treated people fairly, earned what we got. If I let Chris and Jana steal the company through lies about my mental state, I'd be breaking that legacy. I'd be teaching my son that betrayal was acceptable if you were clever enough to get away with it. And there was one more thing, something I hadn't told anyone. Those AI patents I'd developed, they weren't just valuable intellectual property. They were revolutionary. The kind of breakthrough that happens once in a generation. 2 major tech companies had already approached Catherine Mitchell, my patent attorney, with preliminary offers. Microsoft wanted licensing rights for their small business division. Google was interested in acquisition. The numbers they were discussing made Beacon Tech's $3.2 million valuation looked like pocket change. If Chris and Gina succeeded in their plan, they'd inherit patents worth approximately $9.8 million. Money they'd never earned from technology they'd never understand, built by a mind they'd convinced everyone was failing. That couldn't happen. Not just because it was theft, but because it would prove their lies were more powerful than the truth. So I had a choice. Stay quiet and lose everything, or fight back and risk everything. The difference was simple. If I stayed quiet, I'd definitely lose. If I fought back, at least I had a chance to win. And after 18 months of preparation, I liked my chances. The first real confrontation happened on Wednesday morning, October 18th, during our weekly strategy meeting. Chris walked into the conference room like he owned it. His laptop bag cost more than most people's monthly salary. His confidence filled the space before he did. "Dad, we need to talk about the Morrison project." Jake Morrison's customer database overhaul. 6 months of work, almost finished, on budget. "What about it?" I asked. "It's behind schedule. Way behind." Rebecca looked up from her notes. "Actually, Jake's ahead of schedule. We're launching 2 weeks early." Chris's jaw tightened. "That's not the information I have." "What information?" I kept my voice level. "Jake came to me yesterday. Concerns about project scope. Management decisions that don't make technical sense." I felt the room's energy shift. Our marketing director, Tom, stopped typing. Rebecca set down her pen. "Jake said that?" I asked. "He's worried about contradictory instructions, mixed messages from leadership." The beautiful thing about lies is they're hard to maintain, especially when the people you're lying about are sitting right there. "Should we call Jake in?" Rebecca suggested. "Clear this up?" Chris's pause lasted 3 seconds too long. "That's not necessary." "I think it is," I said. Rebecca was already dialing. "Jake, can you join us in the conference room? Thanks." While we waited, Chris started damage control. "Look, I'm just trying to help. Streamline communication." "By making things up?" Tom asked. "I didn't make anything up." Jake walked in 90 seconds later. Fresh coffee mug, relaxed smile. He looked confused when he saw the tension. "Jake," I said, "Chris mentioned you had concerns about the Morrison project. Mixed messages from leadership?" Jake's confusion deepened. "No, sir, project's going great. Actually, we're ahead of schedule. Should be done by Halloween." Chris's face went through several expressions. Surprise, anger, then something calculated. "Maybe I misunderstood," he said. "But Jake, haven't you noticed some inconsistencies in Dad's technical direction lately?" Jake looked uncomfortable. Nobody likes being put in the middle of family politics. "Mr. Callahan's been hands-off with technical details," Jake said carefully. "Lets me run my own project. I appreciate that." "Even when his suggestions don't align with modern best practices?" "What suggestions?" Jake asked. "He hasn't made any." Chris was digging his hole deeper, but he couldn't stop. "The database architecture, the security protocols. Surely you've had to work around some outdated thinking." I watched my son create lies in real time, watched him try to manufacture evidence of my incompetence. Jake looked at me, then at Chris. "Sir, your father hasn't given me specific technical direction on anything. He hired me to do a job and let me do it. That's good leadership." The room went quiet. Chris had been caught in a lie that served no purpose except to undermine me. "Well," Chris said, "maybe we should discuss this privately." "No," I said, "let's discuss it right here." Rebecca and Tom were taking notes. This was going on record. "Chris, you just told this room that Jake came to you with concerns that Jake says he never raised. You suggested I gave technical direction that Jake says I never gave. Why?" My son looked at me like I'd slapped him. He wasn't used to being challenged directly. I was trying to address potential issues before they became problems. By inventing them. "Dad, you're twisting my words." "I'm repeating your words." "Exactly." The power dynamic in that room shifted. Chris had walked in expecting to embarrass me with Jake's concerns. Instead, he'd embarrassed himself with obvious lies. But instead of backing down, he doubled down. "Fine. You want specifics? Yesterday you asked me who Maria was. Maria Santos. She's worked here for 8 years. That one was true. I had forgotten Maria's last name for about 10 seconds during a phone call. And last week you couldn't figure out how to export the client list from our CRM. Also true. The interface had changed and I'd needed help. These aren't major failures, Dad. They're signs. Warning signs that people who care about you shouldn't ignore. The room was dead silent. Chris had just diagnosed me in front of our staff. Are you a doctor now? Rebecca asked. I'm a son, Chris said. A son who sees his father struggling and wants to help. I looked around the table. Rebecca was angry. Tom was uncomfortable. Jake wanted to disappear. Thank you for your concern, I said. Meeting adjourned. As everyone filed out, Chris lingered. Dad, I'm trying to protect you. From what? From making mistakes you can't take back. I looked at my son, really looked at him, saw the calculation behind his concern. We all make mistakes we can't take back, I said. The question is whether we recognize them in time. He left thinking I was talking about my mistakes. I wasn't. That Thursday evening, Catherine Mitchell came to my office. Catherine doesn't make house calls. In 12 years of handling Beacon Tech's legal work, she'd never visited after 5 p.m. But there she was at 7:30, carrying a leather briefcase that looked like it cost more than my car. Working late again? She asked, settling into the chair across from my desk. You know me. Old habits. She glanced at my computer screen. I'd been reviewing code, but I closed the laptop before she could see details. Edward, we need to discuss timeline. Timeline, not timelines. The timeline. How long? I asked. 4 to 6 weeks. Maybe less if we push. Catherine pulled documents from her briefcase. Official-looking papers with government seals, patent and trademark office letterheads. The examiner had questions about Algorithm B, specifically the learning curve optimization. I explained that your approach eliminates the traditional memory bottleneck. I nodded. Algorithm B was my proudest achievement. 18 months of work that solved a problem nobody else had figured out. And the licensing inquiries? Microsoft called again yesterday. Their offer is substantial. She slid a folder across my desk. I opened it enough to see numbers with lots of zeros. They want exclusive licensing for their business intelligence division. 3-year term with options to extend. And Google? Still interested in outright acquisition, both patents. The Google folder was thicker, more zeros. Catherine, if someone wanted to challenge my mental competency, how would that affect the patents? Her expression didn't change. Catherine was too good a lawyer to show surprise. The patents are filed under your name. You'd maintain ownership unless a court specifically ruled otherwise, and that would require substantial evidence of incapacity at the time of filing. What kind of evidence? Medical records, expert testimony, pattern of documented incompetence. I thought about Chris's careful documentation of my decline. The emails about my forgetfulness, Jana's articles about aging tech founders. Hypothetically, Catherine said, if someone tried to challenge your competency, when were these patents filed? Provisionally, 18 months ago. Final applications, 14 months ago. Before any alleged decline. Exactly. She leaned back in her chair. Edward, is there something you need to tell me? Catherine had been my lawyer long enough to read between lines. She knew I didn't ask hypothetical legal questions. Not yet, I said. But soon. After she left, I sat alone in my office until nearly midnight. The building was empty except for security. Through my window, Austin's skyline glittered with lights from other late-night workers. I opened my laptop and reviewed the code one more time. Thousands of hours of work, compressed into elegant algorithms that could revolutionize how small businesses handled data. Algorithm A tackled the integration problem, how to pull information from dozens of different software platforms and make it usable. Algorithm B solved the learning curve issue, how to make complex data analysis simple enough for non-technical users. Together, they represented a breakthrough that would make current business intelligence software look primitive. My phone buzzed. Text message from Rebecca. Saw Catherine leaving, everything okay? Rebecca noticed everything. In 2 years as CFO, she'd become my most trusted advisor. Sometimes I thought she understood Beacon Tech's potential better than I did. I texted back, "All good. Big things coming." "How big?" I stared at the screen for a long time before answering, "Company changing big." 3 dots appeared, then disappeared. Rebecca was typing, then stopping. Finally, "Need anything?" "Your discretion." "Always." I put the phone down and looked at my father's desk chair. Solid oak, built to last generations. He'd told me to build something worthy of our name. I was about to find out if I had. Friday, October 27th, the day Chris decided to destroy me in public. Jonathan Hayes from Pinnacle Venture Capital was visiting. Jonathan controlled $200 million in tech investments and had been considering a major stake in Beacon Tech. This meeting could set our company's future for the next decade. Chris had prepared a presentation about modernizing our technology stack. I should have seen it coming. The conference room was packed. Jonathan and his 2 associates sat at the head of the table. Rebecca, Tom, Maria, and 3 other department heads filled the remaining chairs. Even Jake Morrison was there, laptop ready to discuss technical specifications. "Thank you all for coming," Chris began. "Today we're discussing Beacon Tech's evolution into a truly modern enterprise." He clicked to his first slide, "Legacy Systems versus Future-Ready Solutions." The phrase legacy systems hit like a slap. In tech, legacy means obsolete, outdated, ready for replacement. Our current architecture, Chris continued, reflects decisions made when the company was smaller, simpler, when one person could manage all technical decisions. Jonathan Hayes was taking notes. His associates were already looking skeptical. "Of course, there's nothing wrong with how things were built," Chris said, glancing at me. "But business requirements have evolved. User expectations have changed. What worked 5 years ago might not work today." I sat quietly, watching my son perform character assassination with PowerPoint slides. "For example," Chris clicked to the next slide, "our current database design uses SQL Server 2016. That's 2 major versions behind industry standard." Jake Morrison raised his hand. "Actually, we upgraded to SQL Server 2022 last month. That's the current version." Chris paused. He hadn't expected to be fact-checked. "Right. Well, the point stands about our overall approach to modernization." But Jonathan Hayes was already frowning. "Venture capitalists hate factual errors. They suggest sloppy due diligence." Chris recovered quickly. "The bigger issue is strategic direction, how we make technology decisions, whether we're keeping pace with industry trends." And another slide, "Modern tech leadership, data-driven decision-making." In today's environment, Chris said, technology decisions require understanding AI integration, cloud-native architecture, and machine learning workflows, areas where traditional experience might not be sufficient. The room went cold. Chris wasn't just criticizing our technology anymore. He was criticizing me. "Chris," Rebecca interrupted, "what specific deficiencies are you addressing?" My CFO wasn't going to let this slide. "I'm not talking about deficiencies," Chris said. "I'm talking about evolution, natural evolution in leadership approaches." "Meaning what?" Jonathan Hayes asked. Chris had wanted this question. He was ready for it. "Meaning that sometimes the best way to honor someone's legacy is to build on it, to let fresh perspectives take what they've created to the next level." I felt every eye in the room turn toward me. This was the moment Chris had orchestrated. The public suggestion that I should step aside for the good of the company. "So you're recommending leadership changes?" Jonathan asked. "I'm recommending leadership evolution, a transition that recognizes both experience and the need for modern technical expertise." Jonathan looked at me. "Edward, what's your response to this?" The room was dead silent. 15 people waiting to see if the founder would fight back or accept his son's coup attempt. I could have exploded, could have pointed out Chris's factual errors, his questionable motives, his complete lack of experience running anything bigger than his own department. Instead, I did something that shocked everyone, including myself. I agreed with him. "Chris raises valid points," I said calmly. "The technology landscape is changing rapidly. Modern solutions require modern thinking." Chris looked confused. This wasn't the reaction he had expected. In fact, I continued, I've been working on exactly that challenge: how to position Beacon Tech for the next decade of growth. What do you mean? Jonathan asked. I could have told them everything right then. About the patents, the algorithms, the $9.8 million opportunity waiting in Catherine's briefcase. But timing matters, and this wasn't the right time. I mean that Chris is right about evolution, but evolution builds on existing strengths. It doesn't replace them. I looked around the room. Everyone here helped build Beacon Tech into something worth evolving. The question isn't whether we need fresh thinking. The question is whether we trust ourselves to think fresh thoughts. Chris was struggling to regain control of his own presentation. Dad, that's exactly my point. Fresh thinking requires fresh leadership. Does it? Or does it require leadership that understands both where we've been and where we're going? Jonathan Hayes was watching our exchange like a tennis match. His associates were taking detailed notes. Edward, Jonathan said, where do you see Beacon Tech in 2 years? This was my moment, not to reveal everything, but to plant seeds that would make sense later. I see us leading, not following. I see us solving problems that other companies don't even know they have yet. I see us owning intellectual property that changes how business gets done. That sounds ambitious, Jonathan said. It should. Ambitious goals require ambitious thinking, and sometimes the most ambitious thing you can do is trust that experience plus innovation equals breakthrough. Chris's face was red. His carefully planned presentation had become a philosophical discussion about leadership and innovation. Dad, with respect, general statements about breakthroughs don't address specific technical challenges. You're absolutely right, I said, which is why I'm not making general statements. I closed Chris's laptop. This meeting is about Beacon Tech's future, not about who gets to decide that future. Jonathan, I appreciate your time today. I think our next conversation should be about specifics, not theories. Jonathan Hayes looked intrigued. What kind of specifics? The kind that require NDAs and patent attorneys. The room went electric. Patent attorneys meant intellectual property. Intellectual property meant breakthrough technology. Chris looked like I'd pulled a gun on him. When can we schedule that conversation? Jonathan asked. Next week, after a few things fall into place. As everyone filed out, Chris cornered me. What the hell was that about? I looked at my son, really looked at him, saw the fear behind his anger. That was about trusting your father's judgment, I said. What patents? What intellectual property? I smiled. The kind that makes this conversation irrelevant. Monday, November 6th, 10:00 a.m., Jonathan Hayes returned with his full team and 2 additional investors I hadn't expected. Catherine Mitchell was already in the conference room when I arrived, her briefcase open, documents arranged in precise stacks. Rebecca sat beside her, unusually quiet. Chris walked in 5 minutes late, confident, as always. Gina followed him, uninvited, but I said nothing. Thank you all for coming, I began. Today's presentation's about Beacon Tech's actual position in the marketplace. Not where we hope to be, but where we already are. I nodded to Catherine. She activated the wall display and connected her laptop. 18 months ago, I continued, I began developing solutions to 2 fundamental problems in business intelligence: integration, complexity, and learning curve barriers. The first slide showed Algorithm A's patent filing. Date stamp, April 15th, 2023. Status, approved. Chris's face went white. Dad, what is this? The first patent covers data integration across multiple platforms. Essentially, it allows small businesses to pull information from dozens of different software systems and analyze it as a single data set. Jonathan Hayes leaned forward. How is that different from existing business intelligence tools? Existing tools require technical expertise and significant setup time. My algorithm eliminates both barriers. A restaurant owner can connect their POS system, inventory management, employee scheduling, and accounting software with 3 clicks. I nodded to Catherine again. The second slide showed Algorithm B's documentation. The second patent addresses the learning curve problem. Current BI tools require training, consultation, ongoing support. Algorithm B creates natural language interfaces that learn from user behavior. Meaning what, exactly? One of Jonathan's associates asked. Meaning you can ask questions in plain English and get actionable answers. Which menu items are most profitable on rainy days? What's my optimal staffing level for Thursday nights? How much inventory should I order for Valentine's Day? The room was silent. These weren't theoretical improvements. These were fundamental advances that would make every existing solution obsolete. When were these patents filed? Jonathan asked. Provisional applications 18 months ago. Final applications 14 months ago. Both were approved last month. Gina found her voice first. Edward, why didn't you tell anyone about this? I looked at my ex-wife, really looked at her, saw the greed calculating behind her surprise. I told my patent attorney, I told my CFO, I told the people who needed to know. Rebecca nodded confirmation. She'd been managing the legal expenses for over a year. Chris was struggling to process what he'd heard. Dad, this is huge. Why keep it secret? Because patents are only valuable if they're protected, and protection requires careful timing. Catherine took over the presentation. We've received preliminary licensing inquiries from Microsoft and Google. Microsoft wants exclusive rights for their business intelligence division. Google has made acquisition offers for both patents. She clicked to the next slide. Numbers filled the screen. Microsoft's current offer for 3-year exclusive licensing, $3.2 million annually, with performance bonuses potentially reaching $1.8 million per year. Chris's mouth was open. Gina was staring at the screen like she was reading a foreign language. Google's acquisition offer for both patents, $9.8 million, with additional royalties on products incorporating the technology. Jonathan Hayes was no longer taking notes. He was calculating. Edward, what does this mean for Beacon Tech's valuation? It means our previous assessment of $3.2 million was based on incomplete information. What's the complete information? Catherine answered. Beacon Tech owns intellectual property worth approximately $10 million in its current form. If the patents are successfully commercialized through major tech partnerships, that value could triple within 5 years. The silence in that room was deafening. Chris found his voice. Dad, I had no idea you were working on this. I know you didn't. Why didn't you tell me? I'm your partner in this company. I looked at my son, saw his confusion, his anger, his desperate attempt to recalculate everything he thought he knew. Chris, 3 weeks ago you told the same room that I was struggling with basic technology. You suggested that modern solutions require modern thinking. You recommended leadership evolution. I was trying to help. Were you? I pulled out my iPhone and activated the voice recorder app, because I have 18 recorded conversations that suggest something different. Chris's face went gray. You recorded our conversations? I recorded everything, including the call you forgot to hang up 2 weeks ago. I pressed play. Chris's voice filled the conference room. Dad's too blind to see we control everything now. The old man can barely operate his laptop without those reading glasses. Then Gina's voice. Perfect. Once we get him declared incompetent, we split Beacon Tech 50-50. $3.2 million is worth a little patience. The recording continued for 90 seconds. Their plan, laid out in detail, the medical evaluation they'd scheduled, the lawyer they'd consulted, the narrative they'd been building about my declining competence. When it ended, nobody moved. Jonathan Hayes spoke first. Jesus Christ. Gina was staring at the conference table like she wanted to crawl under it. Chris looked like he might throw up. So here's where we stand, I said. Beacon Tech owns patents worth nearly $10 million, patents developed by a supposedly incompetent founder while his loving family was planning to have him declared mentally unfit. I looked around the room. The irony is beautiful. While you were gathering evidence of my technological incompetence, I was creating technology that makes every criticism you raised completely irrelevant. Rebecca spoke for the first time in 30 minutes. Edward, what happens now? Now we make some decisions. Jonathan, your investment proposal is still on the table, with adjusted terms reflecting our actual intellectual property value. Jonathan nodded slowly. Obviously, yes. Chris, your employment here is terminated, effective immediately. Rebecca will handle your final paperwork. My son looked like I'd hit him with a baseball bat. Dad, you can't. I can. I will. I did. This is a family business. Exactly. And families don't steal from each other. Gina tried damage control. Edward, if we could discuss this privately. No. Everything happens in public now. No more private conversations. No more secret planning. I stood up. The meeting was over. Catherine will handle the Microsoft and Google negotiations. Rebecca will manage the transition. Jonathan will schedule a follow-up meeting to discuss investment terms based on our actual valuation. Chris was still sitting, still processing. Dad, I'm sorry. I made a mistake, but you made a choice. Multiple choices over several months. This isn't a mistake. This is who you chose to be. I walked toward the door, then stopped. One more thing. The next time you think someone is too old or too incompetent to understand technology, remember that some of us were building breakthrough technology while you were learning how to spell. By Thursday afternoon, the consequences were rolling out like dominoes. Rebecca had prepared Chris's termination paperwork with surgical precision. No severance, since theft conspiracy violated his employment contract. His company laptop, credit cards, and building access were revoked within hours. Catherine filed preliminary legal motions to protect the patents from any ownership challenges. Texas law was clear. Intellectual property developed by company founders belonged to the company, regardless of family relationships. But the most satisfying consequence came from Jonathan Hayes. Edward, he said during our Wednesday call, I'm recommending immediate Series A funding for Beacon Tech. $20 million for 30% equity. $20 million. Based on patents Chris never knew existed, developed by a mind he'd convinced everyone was failing. There's one condition, Jonathan continued. We want exclusive rights to license Algorithm A to our portfolio companies. The competitive advantage would be enormous. By Friday morning, 3 more venture capital firms had called. Word travels fast in Austin's tech community, especially word about breakthrough patents and $8 million acquisition offers. Chris tried to call me 6 times. I didn't answer. Gina sent text messages. We need to talk. This affects both of us. Don't let pride destroy our family. I blocked her number. The most important consequence was what didn't happen. Nobody tried to have me declared incompetent. Nobody questioned my mental capacity. Nobody suggested I was too old to run a tech company. It's amazing how patent documentation can cure concerns about cognitive decline. Jake Morrison stopped by my office Friday afternoon. Mr. Callahan, I owe you an apology. For what? For doubting you. When Chris kept asking about your technical direction, your decision-making, I started wondering if maybe he was right. I looked at Jake, young, brilliant, eager, exactly like Chris, but without the entitlement. Jake, doubt is healthy. It keeps you asking questions. But next time someone tells you I'm incompetent, remember that incompetent people don't own $10 million in breakthrough patents. Yes, sir. Also, are we hiring? I smiled. What do you have in mind? Chris's position is open. I'd like to apply for VP of Operations. You're 28 years old. Yes, sir. But I know the difference between SQL Server 2016 and SQL Server 2022. Jake got the promotion. Rebecca knocked on my door an hour later. Edward, we need to discuss something. She looked serious, more serious than usual. The patent revenue projections. If Microsoft and Google both want licensing deals, we're looking at $8 to $12 million annually within 2 years. That's a good problem to have. It's not a problem. It's a responsibility. What are we going to do with that money? I'd been thinking about the same question. Beacon Tech had always been a small company with big ambitions. Suddenly, we had the resources to match the ambitions. Employee profit sharing, I said. Everyone who helped build this company deserves to benefit from its success. How much profit sharing? Enough to matter. Maria's been here 8 years. Tom built our entire marketing strategy. You've kept us financially sound through every challenge. Rebecca smiled. Chris is going to hate this. Chris made his choice. Now he gets to live with it. Saturday morning brought the final consequence. Catherine called with an update. Edward, Google increased their offer. They want both patents plus an exclusive consulting contract with you. $12.5 million. $12.5 million for algorithms developed by a supposedly declining mind while a loving family planned to steal everything I'd built. What do you recommend? I asked. Take it. Patent litigation's expensive and time-consuming. This guarantees immediate value while protecting your intellectual property. And Beacon Tech continues operating with a $12, $5 million windfall, and no family drama. I thought about my father's advice. Build something that lasts. Something worthy of your name. Mission accomplished. 2 weeks later, the full scope of consequences became clear. Chris filed for unemployment benefits. Denied. Texas doesn't provide unemployment for employees terminated for cause, and attempted theft qualified as cause. His Tesla payments became a problem. Without his $127,000 VP salary, he couldn't afford the $800 monthly lease. I heard through Rebecca that he was driving a 12-year-old Honda Civic. Gina's social rehabilitation campaign failed spectacularly. She'd tried to position herself as the concerned ex-wife who was worried about Edward's health. But recorded evidence of conspiracy to steal $10 million in patents makes rehabilitation difficult. The Austin tech community is smaller than people realize. Word spread quickly about the family that tried to steal breakthrough AI technology from their own father. Chris's job applications were quietly rejected by every major firm in Central Texas. Gina moved back to Dallas, claiming Austin held too many painful memories. But the positive consequences were more satisfying than the negative ones. Jake Morrison excelled as VP of Operations. His first initiative was reorganizing our development schedule to prepare for Google's licensing requirements. His second was implementing profit sharing for all employees. Maria Santos, our customer service manager, broke down crying when she saw her profit-sharing check. Mr. Callahan, this is more money than I've ever seen at once. Tom Henderson, our marketing director, used his windfall to buy a house. His first house after 8 years of apartment living. Rebecca received the largest profit-sharing bonus, reflecting her role in protecting the company's financial stability. She immediately reinvested it in Beacon Tech equity. Edward, she said, if you're building something this valuable, I want to be part of it for the long term. By December, Beacon Tech had 17 new employees, not because we needed them immediately, but because we could afford to build for the future rather than just surviving the present. Google's integration of Algorithm A into their small business platform launched in January. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Small business owners were calling it revolutionary and game-changing. It's like having a business consultant who actually understands my numbers, one restaurant owner told TechCrunch. I ask simple questions and get answers that help me make money. Algorithm B's natural language interface was even more popular. The ability to ask business questions in plain English eliminated the learning curve that kept most small businesses away from data analytics. Within 6 months, Google was reporting that small business engagement with their analytics platform had increased 340%. Revenue from business intelligence subscriptions grew by $2.1 billion annually. My royalty checks reflected that success. The initial $12.5 million payment was just the beginning. Performance bonuses added another $3.2 million in the first year. Forbes called it the AI breakthrough nobody saw coming. The article quoted several industry experts who praised the elegance of my algorithms. Edward Callahan solved problems that PhD teams at major corporations couldn't crack, said Dr. Sarah Williams from MIT's Computer Science Department. This is what happens when experience meets innovation. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. The supposedly incompetent founder had out-innovated every major tech company in America. Chris tried to reach out several times. Christmas card, birthday card, Father's Day card. Each one included some variation of, I made a terrible mistake, and can we rebuild our relationship? I didn't respond to any of them. Gina made one final attempt at reconciliation in March. She showed up at Beacon Tech's office, asking to speak with me privately. Edward, I know what we did was wrong, but we're family. Surely that counts for something. I looked at the woman I'd been married to for 18 years, mother of my son, someone I'd trusted completely. Gina, family means protecting each other, supporting each other, building something together. What you and Chris did was the opposite of family. People make mistakes. This wasn't a mistake. Mistakes happen once. You and Chris spent months planning to steal my life's work. You documented my supposed incompetence. You consulted lawyers. You scheduled medical evaluations. That's not a mistake. That's a calculated betrayal. She tried tears. They didn't work. What about forgiveness? What about second chances? You had 18 years of chances. Every day of our marriage was a chance to treat me with respect. Every conversation with Chris was a chance to build him into someone with integrity. You chose differently. Gina left Austin permanently that week. The most rewarding consequence came in May. Austin Business Journal named me Tech Innovator of the Year. The ceremony was held at the Four Seasons, with 200 local business leaders in attendance. My acceptance speech was brief. Innovation requires 3 things, I told the audience. Vision to see possibilities others miss, persistence to work when others rest, and wisdom to know the difference between supporters and saboteurs. I looked out at the crowd. Many faces I recognized. Investors, competitors, colleagues. Some people will tell you that age is the enemy of innovation. That experience makes you cautious. That wisdom slows you down. I'm here to tell you they're wrong. Experience teaches you which risks are worth taking. Wisdom shows you which people are worth trusting. And age gives you perspective that turns good ideas into breakthrough technology. The standing ovation lasted 90 seconds. Rebecca was in the audience, along with Jake, Maria, Tom, and 12 other Beacon Tech employees. My real family. The people who'd believed in the company when believing required faith rather than financial projections. Catherine Mitchell was there too, representing the legal profession that protects intellectual property and punishes those who try to steal it. Jonathan Hayes attended with 3 other venture capitalists who'd invested in Beacon Tech's expanded operations. But the most meaningful presence was symbolic. I wore my father's watch, the one he'd given me when I started the company. Build something that lasts, he'd said, something worthy of your name. 15 years later, surrounded by people who respected what I'd built rather than plotting to steal it, I knew I'd succeeded. The tech industry is brutal to founders who lose their edge, but it's incredibly rewarding to founders who prove they never lost it in the first place. By year's end, Beacon Tech was valued at $45 million. My patents were licensed to 6 major corporations. The algorithms I'd developed, while supposedly suffering cognitive decline, had become the foundation for a new generation of business intelligence tools. Chris and Gina had tried to steal a $3.2 million company. Instead, they'd taught me to protect a $45 million empire. Sometimes the best revenge is simply succeeding. 1 year later, I'm sitting in the same office where this story began. Same desk, same chair, same view of Austin's skyline. But everything else has changed. Beacon Tech now employs 43 people. Our revenue has grown 1,200% in 12 months. Google's integration of my patents has created the most successful small business intelligence platform in history. More importantly, I've learned to recognize the difference between family and people who share your DNA. Rebecca Stone is family. She protected the company's finances while I developed breakthrough technology. When others questioned my competence, she documented my contributions. Jake Morrison is family. He took criticism meant to undermine my leadership and turned it into opportunities to demonstrate my vision. Maria Santos, Tom Henderson, and 38 other employees are family. They trusted me to lead them somewhere better, and I did. Catherine Mitchell is family. She protected my intellectual property when my own son was planning to steal it. Chris and Gina, they're people who share my DNA. The difference matters. Family supports your success. DNA relatives sometimes try to steal it. I haven't spoken to Chris since that November morning when I fired him. He's moved to Dallas, working as a junior analyst for a consulting firm. His LinkedIn profile lists his experience as business development rather than VP of operations. Employers do background checks on senior positions. Conspiracy to commit theft shows up in background checks. Gina remarried. A retired insurance executive with a modest pension and no patents worth stealing. I heard they moved to Florida, where Gina can rebuild her life away from people who remember her conspiracy. I don't hate them. Hate requires emotional investment, and I've learned to invest my emotions in people who've earned them. But I don't forgive them either. Forgiveness implies the relationship can be restored. Some relationships can't be restored because they were never what you thought they were in the first place. The most important lesson I've learned is about trust and verification. For 18 years, I trusted Chris because he was my son. For 20 years, I trusted Gina because she was my wife. I assumed that family status guaranteed loyalty. I was wrong. Now I trust people based on their actions, not their titles. Rebecca has earned trust through 5 years of financial integrity. Jake has earned it through consistent performance and honest communication. Catherine has earned it through protecting my interests even when doing so was difficult. Trust based on actions is more reliable than trust based on relationships. The second lesson is about the value of quiet preparation. When Chris and Jenna were building their case for my incompetence, I could have fought back immediately. Could have confronted them, defended myself, demanded respect. Instead, I used their attacks as motivation to work harder. Every criticism became fuel for innovation. Every suggestion that I was too old became evidence that they didn't understand what age and experience could accomplish. Quiet preparation beats loud complaints every time. The third lesson is about recognizing your own worth. For months, I let Chris and Gina's criticism make me question myself. Maybe I was slowing down. Maybe I was holding the company back. Maybe younger leadership would be better for everyone. But the patents proved something important. My mind wasn't declining. It was evolving. Focusing on breakthrough innovation rather than daily operations wasn't incompetence. It was strategic thinking. Never let other people's limitations define your capabilities. The final lesson is about justice versus revenge. I could have destroyed Chris and Gina completely, could have filed criminal charges for conspiracy to commit theft, could have sued them for emotional distress, business interference, defamation. Instead, I let their own actions create their consequences. Chris's incompetence in the November meeting exposed his lies. Gina's greed trapped her in recorded confessions. Their betrayal became its own punishment. Justice doesn't require your anger. It just requires your patience. Today, Beacon Tech is preparing to launch 3 new products based on my patent portfolio. We're hiring 25 additional employees over the next 6 months. We're moving to a larger building with room for expansion. My father's desk chair sits in the corner of my new office, ready for the day I need its reminder about building something that lasts. The company he inspired me to create has survived family betrayal, corporate sabotage, and industry skepticism. It's not just surviving, it's thriving. Some people will tell you that blood is thicker than water. I've learned that integrity is thicker than blood. Choose your family carefully. Build your boundaries clearly. Trust your abilities completely. And remember, the best response to people who underestimate you isn't an argument. It's achievement. If this story resonated with you, please subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. Have you ever been underestimated by people who should have supported you? Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is prove them wrong quietly.